The aim of health and safety is to prevent dangerous things from occurring. For example, for reasons of safety, playing conkers has been banned from the playground. For reasons of safety, cereal boxes no longer have toys in them in case a child chokes. And when parents see their child walking along a wall, for reasons of safety, they immediately tell them to get down. But though health and safety's goal is prevention, total avoidance of danger is impossible. You can stop kids playing conkers, but you can't avoid the class bully punching them in the eye. A child can trip up walking along the path just as easily as they can fall off a wall. Total safety is impossible. And that's where security comes in. Security acknowledges that danger exists, but helps us to cope with it. Not preventing danger, but strengthening us against it. For example, a secure building doesn't get rid of thieves, but it does restrict what thieves can successfully steal. The presence of a first aider won't insulate us from injury and ill health, but we all feel more secure knowing one is around. Police don't make the streets safe, but they do make the streets more secure. We all want safety, but what we most need is security. And thankfully that is what we find in God. Psalm 9 verse 9 reads like this: "The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble." God doesn't promise to prevent oppression and trouble from occurring, but God is a source of strength to those who look to Him in it, providing us not with safety from all disasters, but the security that He will lead us through. Basically, in other words, we need to change from seeing God as the health and safety officer of heaven, somebody who prevents all disease and all disaster and difficulty from entering our life. Instead, we need to remind ourselves that God is a rock, a refuge and a fortress, providing us with security, stability and strength when trouble occurs. So with that in mind, we'll be looking at the Psalms at the topic of security, and we'll look at three things: God before us, God beside us, God beneath us. God before us, God beside us, God beneath us. So firstly, God before us. Snap, crackle, fee, fi, fo. Lucy in the sky with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. No doubt the random words pop, fum, diamonds and tea have just entered your head. Why? Because when we see a blank, our natural reaction is to want to fill it. Our mind can't leave the sentence, cat got your... We like to fill the blank ourselves. Well, cat got your tongue was probably how your head would have filled that last blank. What we do with sentences, fill the blank, we also do with our future. For though all of our futures are one big blank, as in we don't know what's going to happen, we tend to fill that blank ourselves. This can be dangerous, as the current pandemic shows. Some fill the blank with anxiety. This might happen, and then that might happen, and if this and that happen, then I won't be able to cope. Some fill this blank with great certainty. This sniffle of a problem will be gone by the end of the year. Some fill the blank with overconfidence. No matter what happens, the government and scientists have all the answers. If we do this and that, everything will be okay. Our natural reaction is to fill the blank of our future with some idea of what we think or fear or hope might happen. David's future, who wrote many of the Psalms, King David's future was one big blank. His enemies were constantly setting traps for him, but he'd prayed that God would keep him safe. But whose plans would be fulfilled? His enemies' plans for the worst, or David's hopes of what he wanted to occur? David says in Psalms 31, "But I trust in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemy, from those who pursue me." David still had very clear wishes of what he wanted his future to be. That's why he asked God to fill the blank of his future with deliverance and ease. But despite desiring absolute safety, David rested secure that my times are in your hands. David rested secure that his times were in God's hands. In other words, David knew that God was in ultimate control. Just as much in control of times of trouble as God is in control during times of good. We see this thought echoed in some other of David's prayers. Psalm 16, "Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure." This was the biblical way of saying, God deals the cards of my life. Psalm 23 verse 3, "He, God, guides me along the right paths." Psalm 139, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Information: God is in control of the blank of your future. Application: go to bed with this thought on your mind. Psalm 3 verses 2 to 5. "Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, Lord, are a shield around me. I lie down and sleep." David slept in many unsafe places. Caves, fields, a stone's throw away from his enemy's vast army. But though David went to bed knowing the worst could realistically happen, he rested secure that God was still in control. Psalm 4, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." What runs through your head when you go to sleep? I hope this won't happen tomorrow. If this happens, I won't be able to cope. I've planned this to happen, but if it doesn't happen, I don't know what I'll do. Instead of filling the blank of your future with what you think or fear or hope will happen, remind yourself of God's sovereign control over all things. This doesn't mean everything in your life will go smoothly, nor does it mean you won't at times ask why God would let such and such happen. However, I'd be a lot more fearful if blind fate or random chance filled the blank of my future. I find it a lot more reassuring to know that an all-wise and all-good God fills the blank instead. So, God before us, the future before us is in the hands of God. God beside us. God is with us in it all. Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The various psalmists rested secure that God was beside them in trouble, and whilst in the middle of the darkest valley. Total safety wasn't offered, but total security was. They could be secure knowing that God was with them, beside them, and near enough to help them. And when you feel alone and vulnerable to your own circumstances, that is a very reassuring thing. Now, Christian experience of this reality varies greatly. Some have journeyed through the darkest valley and been profoundly aware of God with them. Some have walked through this same valley and had no sense of God's presence at all. In fact, if Jesus is anything to go by, we should expect to experience a bit of both. In verse 5 of Psalm 31, you'll read the words that Jesus quoted on the cross. Jesus said, "Into your hands I commit my spirit." Jesus prayed this prayer knowing that God was near enough to hear. And yet, what other scripture did Jesus quote before speaking these words? Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Even at the moment of God's greatest absence, Jesus, by faith, was confident that God was there. He didn't necessarily feel it or see it, but he was confident that God was near enough to hear and near enough to help. Now, put your hand on your heart and tell me which you experience the most. Literally do it. Put your hand on your heart and say either, "I feel God is always with me," or "Sometimes I feel God is far away." Now take your hand off your heart and I'd like you to place it on your liver. Place your hand on your liver. Now, it's there by the way. Have any of you seen your liver? Can any of you feel your liver under the palm of your hand? Despite never feeling or seeing your liver, you all seem rather confident that it is there. In fact, every day of your life, your liver's been helping you deal with toxins, cuts to the skin, and the food your body needs to digest. Could not the same be said of God? Not always seen or felt, but always with us. His presence experienced to varying degrees, but always working in the background to help. For God has promised, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." Remind yourself by faith of that fact next time you feel vulnerable, fearful, or alone. God is before us, the future before us is in the hands of God. God beside us. God is beside us in it all. And thirdly and finally, God beneath us. God is the foundation that we can trust. God beneath us. Now David spent time hidden in a rock when Saul was chasing him. He also spent time in a fortress when he was being attacked. David probably took refuge in the fact that he had killed giants and defeated armies. David probably felt his resources and experiences shielded him from harm. But what was David dependent on most of all? Psalm 18 verse 2. "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of salvation, my stronghold." David is acknowledging that God is a more trustworthy source of security than all of these other things. Shields, rocks, fortresses, strongholds. And so rather than first looking to these things for strength and security, David began by praying to God. Psalm 31 verse 1. "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge." Later on in the psalm, "Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. You are my rock." David looked to God first as the ultimate source of security. This didn't mean he denied the value of experience. This didn't mean he disapproved of making plans. This didn't mean he declined the help of things that could help him or that could protect him, such as a shield or a fortress. David didn't undervalue these things, but he didn't overvalue them either. For example, plans fail and constantly need revising. Yesterday's experiences go out of date as soon as we meet something new. The people we trust will one day turn to us and say that they can't help us. And every other worldly source of security, technology, money, the NHS, all of these will one day let you and I down. If these are your plan A of getting through life, you'll always be in need of a plan B. So what does it look like to make God plan A? What does it mean to depend on God above all these other things? Well, you don't need somebody with 10 theology degrees to answer that question for you and me. We simply need to spend a minute reading the first verse of every psalm. Why not do it now or after this sermon? Spend a minute flicking through the Psalms and reading the first verse of every one. The first verse of nearly every psalm describes the first step of depending on God. Take the situation to God in prayer. Psalm 4 verse 1. Answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. Psalm 5 verse 1. Listen to my words. Psalm 7 verse 1. Lord my God, I take refuge in you. Psalm 16 verse 1. Keep me safe, my God, for in you I take refuge. Psalm 17 verse 1. Hear me, Lord, my plea is just. Listen to my cry. Hear my prayer. Step 1. Make God your foundation by taking every situation to God in prayer. Step 2. Keep trusting God when the other sources of security let you down or get taken away. Picture a bridge between two mountains in your head. Picture a bridge made of rope and wooden planks. Now in your mind, remove every other plank from that bridge. Again, picture that bridge and remove every other plank again. This time, picture some of the supporting ropes missing from that bridge. Now walk over this bridge in your mind. The more ropes and planks are missing from the bridge, the less secure we feel about walking across it. And what is true for walking across a bridge is true for life as well. We feel less confident when we lack prior experience of something. We feel less confident when we can't see how things might work out. When answers and solutions aren't available in advance, or when we feel we lack the strength to cope. When we have these things, experience, a knowledge of what might happen, when we have answers and solutions and we feel we are strong, we feel secure. But when we lack these things, we begin to panic. But part of what it means to trust God is to rest secure when all these other sources of security are taken away. As David so famously said in Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." So, in order to feel secure, remember these 3 responses of faith. God before you. The future before you is in the hands of God. God beside you. God is beside you in it all. God beneath you. God is the foundation upon which you can depend.